Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to allow just another minute to allow all of the guests to get on. In that time, I'd like to let you know we are recording today's session, and we'll make the link shareable to you all following today's recording, so you'll have a chance to access it. If you have any questions, please use the chat box or the Q&A panel, and we'll address your questions at the end. Or if you have troubleshooting that needs to be done, you can enter that into the chat box and I will assist you. With that said, it is 2 o'clock, so I will pass it over to Vice President, Dr. Lawrence.
Good afternoon and welcome to our last webinar in this series that focuses on ensuring community colleges emerge stronger after the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of community colleges in the fabric of higher education has expanded over the years. And as the country works to recover from the coronavirus pandemic, these institutions may be more important now than ever before. So with that, I'd like to introduce our president of SRAB, Dr. Stephen Pruitt. He also wants to bring just a few words about the importance of these institutions and share some other things that we are considering and doing with this work. Dr. Pruitt.
Thank you, Stevie. It's great to be with you today. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. With everything that's going on in the world right now, from trying to emerge from this pandemic to those of you who are in the South dealing with not having gasoline, to just all the rigors of what happens in the spring between coming out of a legislative session and just trying to get through the academic year. I know how hard it is for you to dedicate time. We feel this is a really important thing. We hope that we will continue to do this kind of work. We have really appreciated, I want to publicly thank the folks from Huron and the partnership that you guys have had with us through this. The reality is, if we are really going to bounce back, and again, we chose the term emerging stronger for a reason. We don't want to just return to a status quo that we had before the pandemic. We know what's facing us going forward. We know that the way the workforce is going to be changing over the next 5 to 10 years may be some of the most significant change that we've seen in many, many years. We have entered this fourth industrial revolution where there's going to be so much more that people have to have in the way of skills to be able to be an active member of the economy and of the workforce. So this work will be something that will continue to be a linchpin at SRAB. We believe strongly that community colleges are the engine for recovery, that there are many, many opportunities afforded our citizenry, but that the pathway to get there is going to be through our community colleges. So we are excited about today and about to get today's session. Look for SRAB to continue to do the work around community colleges and expand community colleges and our work with them and in support of you. I want to encourage all of you that are here, and if you represent a community college, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. Tell us what it is that we could do to help you, that we could actually do to make your life a little easier, or the kinds of things that you think would be beneficial. SRAB has a rich history and a unique influence in our legislative branches in all of our states, as well as our gubernatorial. And so we want to be here to be a support for you to help people understand what's going on in your colleges. So again, thank you. Thanks in particular again to Huron and the work that you guys have done on this. It's been incredible work, and more appreciation I cannot show you. You guys just did a fantastic job, and we are so honored and thankful to have had you as a partner. And our speakers today, I think we've got a real rock star group that's going to be presenting to you today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for presenting with us. And if there's anything that SREB can ever do to be of help to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dr. Lawrence or to me, and certainly to reach out to Huron specifically if there are things around these ideas that are going to be shared today that you want more information about. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. As Dr. Pruitt already said, we have a great rock star group. And this afternoon, we are joined by two community college leaders that are a part of that group, Dr. Jay Falkner and Dr. Scott Ralls. President Falkner serves as president of Carl Albert State College in Oklahoma, and President Ralls has the privilege of leading Wake Technical Community College in Raleigh, North Carolina. They are going to share some insightful things about how community colleges are working to even become even stronger engines for economic and educational success of the regions for which they serve as leaders in. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to both Drs. Falkner and Dr. Ralls.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. It's an honor and privilege to be here today. Just so excited to be involved in this process and talk about the great things. You know, we realize what a tremendous time period this has been. And when we look back, hopefully we can look back at this time period with the pandemic and all the other challenges we had to face and with adversity, and we can look back with from positive responses of how that we have invigorated our systems through innovation and collaboration. And those are some of the things that we want to highlight today. And it's an honor to be here with the folks from Huron. It's also an honor to be able to share this platform with President Ralls. And I look forward to the discussion we're going to have as the day progresses. President Ralls.
Thank you, Jay. It is good to speak with everybody. Let me make sure my technology is working. Am I on here? Good. Okay.
We can hear you good, Scott.
All right. I didn't know if you could see me or not. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, it's great to be with you all. I'm pleased to talk about this topic. Like anyone, like Jay and anyone who's part of a community college, it means so much to us because we see up close and personal the impact they have on our students, their families, and then our communities. And I think we're seeing that now as much as ever. The impact that the pandemic had on students, the resiliency of our students to stay with us, the challenges that many of them faced in that process. We know we can look at our numbers and see that, you know, while our numbers have been fairly strong compared to what we thought they could be, that we have weaknesses in the place where our students are most vulnerable, and that's what worries us the most. We believe very strongly that will be the road to recovery in our community, which is recovering very quickly. You know, the opportunities in a tech hub are very unique right now, but many of them will run through our college for those people who need the opportunity the most. And so we're excited about the future, but also paying close attention to the members of our community who have been impacted the most by the challenges over the past year.
Thanks. President Falkner, President Ralls, thank you for this excellent kickoff and for joining us today. My name is Glenn McLaurin. I'm with Huron Consulting Group. I'll be facilitating the discussion. Really, the agenda, as we've worked through the introductions, I'll take a few minutes and shift the focus from past commentary that the focus of the past webinars have been on the impact of COVID-19 on universities and colleges. They, of course, were focusing specifically on community colleges. I'll take a few minutes to set the stage by identifying some recent national trends, and specifically around enrollment and some of the financial impact, as well as some of the independent institutional responses, as well as the emergence of collaborative initiatives as well. After we speak to national landscape and institutional responses, we'll shift to the panel discussion and then conclude with audience Q&A. I thought it would first be helpful to set the stage by identifying some recent national trends. Of course, experiences have varied on an institution by institution or even a campus by campus basis. Across the board, however, we've witnessed that the most profound enrollment declines during the pandemic have been at community colleges. National Student Clearinghouse Research Center has recently released their figures for spring 2021. We've seen notably an 11.3% decline in enrollment from spring 2020 among public two-year institutions. This is down a little bit further than the decline that was witnessed in fall 2020. Even more pronounced has been the enrollment decline among college-age students. There's been a 14.6% decline among students aged 18 to 20. Major contributing factor to this has been college-age students deferring enrollment this year. We've seen even more pronounced declines in Black, Latino and Latina, and Native American demographics. One perhaps bright spot in the shifting enrollment patterns, however, has been that nationally, the transfer student pipeline has actually grown. There's been a 3% increase in students transferring from 2 to 4-year institutions. On the financial front, we've seen a fair amount of volatility nationally with a significant variability with regards to state support. Overall, nationally, the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association is estimating there's been a 2% decline in state support, but this comes on the heels of 22 states actually increasing appropriations. This is a better picture than what was projected last spring, although it has nevertheless created financial difficulties for many institutions. And then lastly, it bears to mention that the higher education emergency relief funding has provided significant supplements to universities and colleges across the nation. The breakdown of funding between 2 and 4 years institutions is not finalized as funding continues to be released, but the supplements have in many cases helped to offset temporary declines in tuition and auxiliary revenues, as well as provide direct support in the form of emergency grants to students. And our work with community colleges across the nation, including President Falkner's institution, Carl Albert State College, we've seen that the shifting revenue streams and volatile enrollment has resulted in a wide range of initiatives that have been pursued and undertaken by many community colleges. At the institution level, we've seen really 3 primary categories of responses. Those addressing enrollment uncertainty, those targeting revenue growth, and those seeking to constrain or limit expenses. We've seen many innovative responses on the enrollment front. Many of our clients have indicated that they are increasingly considering or implementing short track courses, those that may run for only 8 weeks, and new certificate programs, as well as dedicating more resources to workforce development partnerships to provide timely and relevant programmatic offerings. We'll certainly hear more about some of these type of partnerships in our conversation later today. And where institutional aid funds have been available, we've also seen increased interest in targeted retention and completion-oriented scholarships, those that are intended to provide last mile funding to help students cross the finish line to complete an associate's degree or provide funding so they're one course closer to progressing. On the revenue growth side, we've seen as well a greater pursuit of federal aid dollars and fundraising efforts, and of course, an increase in online course offerings. Pre-pandemic, we also saw efforts such as leasing out unoccupied space to community programs, especially those with missions aligned to the community college, as another innovative effort to identify and bring in more resources to the institution, as well as bring relevant programs closer to students. Lastly, on the expense reduction front, we've discussed in previous webinars, there's a wide range of traditional strategies that 4-year and 2-year institutions have pursued. There's ongoing emphasis on reevaluating or consolidating programmatic offerings, efforts to improve course scheduling and space utilization when appropriate, and of course, ongoing efforts to address and constrain administrative costs. It's on the administrative cost front that I want to highlight some of the emergence of what I would call collaborative initiatives or efforts that are being taken across institutions at a rate that we've not seen in prior years. With we've identified that many institutions are exploring partnerships, whether they're academic or administrative, to share resources and reduce independent costs. We have seen a wide range of efforts being undertaken. Many, though, are in the realm of collaborating to help guarantee and streamline transfer programs, as well as improve the recruitment efforts targeting underrepresented and adult populations. We've seen efforts as well to increase the sharing of space, as mentioned previously, co-locating community programs, and perhaps most intriguingly, efforts to share administrative services, leverage procurement contracts, and notably share faculty in the delivery of academic programs. On that initiative, I want to highlight a recent effort undertaken by Carl Albert State College, as well as two other institutions in Southeast Oklahoma, Connor State College and Eastern Oklahoma State College. The CASE initiative is a consortium that is allowing all three of these institutions, all in a rural part of Oklahoma, to expand their academic offerings beyond what each institution can offer independently. The faculty and course sharing is increasing the scope of offerings and improving access for the students. President Falkner, would you like to say a few additional words about the CASE initiative?
Yes, thank you, Glenn. We are so excited about this CASE initiative, and want to say a special thank you to our Chancellor of the State System of Higher Education, Glenn Johnson, for his long-term leadership and mentorship, and giving us the flexibility to try to think collaboratively and to try to focus on innovative ways that we can. For example, we're all the members of the CASE group that we've kind of categorized this way are all rural serving institutions predominantly. I know virtual education has changed the landscape for all of us, but you know, we have limitations in terms of what we can do to offer the students that we serve in the rural parts of Oklahoma a wide variety of course offerings. And we also have found, not only through this arrangement that we have made through the participating institutions, that we are giving increased accessibility to the students that we serve. But what we're finding, and again, this is all very grassroots and somewhat new from an operational standpoint, but the faculty buy-in, I know, Glenn, that we talked about faculty retention and how this can help us as we move forward in our work with your organization, with Huron. And I know there may be some questions about that. What we found, and I know there are several institutions probably on this webinar today that face some of the similar challenges of ways that, you know, we can intrinsically motivate the faculty members that we have. They have passion points in terms of their discipline. At the community college level, we focus a lot on the general education side of our business. But what we found is through this consortium, through this agreement and arrangement, we can give some of our faculty members that opportunity to teach maybe one of the passion point courses that they don't get to teach on a daily basis because of the offerings that we have. And we're seeing some excitement kind of growing from the grassroots level from the faculty standpoint. So it's a tremendous opportunity to increase accessibility for the students that we serve, particularly in rural parts of the state of Oklahoma. It's also a tremendous opportunity for our faculty members to try to help them and motivate them, again, intrinsically, to try to focus on some of their passion points. So it's just a great situation for all the institutions that are involved.
Perfect. Thank you, President Falkner. I'll shift now to sort of the panel discussion part of today. The content of this group thematically really targeting some of the core elements of the mission of a community college: community and economic development, enrollment and access, and as well conversations around operational and financial performance. I would love to start with some comments and discussion around the community and economic development roles that your respective institutions serve. And maybe to start, Wake Tech and Carl Albert are quite different in size, as well as the geographies that they serve, but both are also extraordinarily committed to economic development. I'm curious, As workforce demands are shifting, how are your institutions adding, modifying, or reevaluating programs to meet those changing workforce demands? President Ralls, would you care to speak first to that?
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. I think, community colleges, we uniquely are very jobs focused part of education. So and that's because our students, that's what they're often looking for, those job opportunities. So we share those similarities. What causes us to be different is that we are community colleges, so that we serve our communities, and our communities where they are economically are in different places. So, the great news about us is we're not franchises, that we are specifically developed around our communities. And Wake Tech is that way. We're fortunate we serve a high-tech hub, and that is the opportunity that is here. What we started doing a few years ago was framing our role a little differently. It's really not a change for us, but it's more of a re-emphasis for us. Our community colleges in North Carolina were created years ago to provide equitable access to education for everyone, and to really focus on economic mobility. We were the second poorest state in the nation back in the 1950s, and have emerged, but with an emphasis on education. What we look at from Wake Tech perspective is influences us now. The pandemic served as a kind of a road bump for us, but it didn't slow us down in terms of our strategic focus. And the challenge here for us is that we're in a world of great opportunity, but much of our region has developed through the magnet opportunities. People who have moved here, our great universities that attract people coming for job opportunities. But when you step back and look at our region, one of our great challenges is that if you grow up in this region, particularly with lower income areas, the opportunities to ladder into those positions is more challenging. Economic mobility has not been great here, even though economic opportunity is great. And so we've taken that on as our personal challenge, defining ourselves as our region's by far largest ladder college, and then structuring our programs such that we're not just offering kind of a smattering of programs, but how they connect one to the next, so that students can gain the skills to work in the opportunities that are here, gain experience through apprenticeship emphases that we place, trying to make sure that the programs ladder one into the next. And then through our partnerships with our public schools, we do a great deal in terms of dual enrollment, early high schools, but on the other side, universities, making sure that each of our applied skill programs transfer in unique transfer opportunities. So we call that laddering. It's a kind of a coordinated focus, kind of 8 rungs of the ladder we talk about, and how they each allow that form of career development. And we often use the phrase sometimes ladder economics to describe that. We think that's kind of our unique role in the higher education landscape, which is very, very rich here in the Research Triangle, but we have a particular niche in that landscape.
Terrific. And this ladder college idea features prominently in so much of the strategic planning of Wake Tech. I thought the Wake Works model, this apprenticeship program, is particularly interesting. Would you be willing to speak a little bit more to the elements of that program?
Yeah, as part of what our laddering, we really emphasize work-based learning, and apprenticeship is the gold standard of work-based learning. We've seen great success in opportunities for students in a high-tech environment. Apprenticeship has not necessarily been part of the IT world, the biotech world. It's been part of mostly with construction and manufacturing, still is here, but we're moving that into other areas as well, and deepening in all our areas, because for many of our students, the traditional hiring pathways, particularly into some of the high demand tech companies, have not provided the same opportunities. The idea that we still live in a very traditional world where the idea is, everyone goes to college for 4 years and then they come out the other side and start looking for jobs. Well, for community college students, that's not necessarily the case. They're looking for jobs oftentimes that they can further their education to get the career pathways that they want. And so we can match those together and make sure that they're finding apprenticeship and work-based learning in those same fields. That gives them that entree into the company. So through our county, they support us as a college to do 2 things, one of which is to work with companies, which we do on a everyday basis. I was involved doing this morning with companies, but we have a team to be able to sponsor apprenticeship, to be able to help companies, who are avoiding it because of some of the challenges of registered apprenticeship, to do that, and then provide the funding where students who are enrolled in apprenticeship programs or pre-apprenticeship shorter term training programs that walk into apprenticeship, that's free of charge for them. So we're trying to incentivize it in both those ways. And what it does is provide an avenue for our students to gain experience, skills, but jobs while they're going to school.
Fantastic. President Falkner, I know McLaurin County is much smaller than Wake County, but nevertheless, Crawford State College plays an equally important role as a driver of the economy. I wonder if you could speak a little bit as well for some of the initiatives Carl Albert is pursuing on this front.
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges in higher education is, the wheels are slow to change at times. But one of the advantages of being in the ranks of community college is that we have that adaptability piece where we can kind of move and redefine ourselves when the need is there. I would say that this particular time period with the target market that we serve here at Colorado State College in Southeast Oklahoma, that's been the case for us. We've had to really take a step back. You look from the outside in and redefine our roles. Part of that is because of the economic depression and industrial declines in the service areas where we are. There's a lot of, factory works that were shut down over the last 5 years, just due to different reasons and rationale. Some of the industries that were focused heavily on the oil and gas industry, of course, have been challenged and changed. And so we've noticed a lot of economic downturn, high unemployment rates, and a lot of folks that are looking to retool and try to redefine who they are individually. So we took a step back and we tried to figure out the best way that we could serve the communities that we serve. I think, when you look at what a community college is supposed to be, that's it. That's the centralized mission. And so when we took that step back and tried to look at those things and started meeting with, folks from the Chamber of Commerce, local municipalities, everyone from the cities, in our service markets, all of these different pieces of industry, what we found is that we really needed to be better stewards of not only the educational process, but training, development, even ways that we can model trying to facilitate growth holistically for all of these folks. So what we did is we had, some space that was underutilized in our campus sites that we'd shut down in the economic downturns when we had budget cuts across, this entire state. We took some of those pieces of property, retooled those folks, and we pulled in those partners. So literally the workforce, Oklahoma workforce, the unemployment office now is stationed on our campus site. We have high tribal populations that we're honored to serve every day through the Cherokee Nation and the Choctaw Nation. And so we partner with those entities. Now they have office sites in some of those areas on our campus sites that were shut down as we're trying to look at some cost saving measures. So we did this with several different areas. So now we've become a centralized hub of the entire community that we serve. Well, it's easier to work hand in hand, when you're trying to set up internships, micro-credentialing, all of these different externship possibilities for our faculty members, employability pieces after graduation, everything from our allied health programs to our business programs. It is tremendous. It's a tremendous blessing to have a lot of those players housed on your campus site. And you're also driving the community there. So from a recruitment standpoint, from a service standpoint, our goal was to try to become a facilitator and one-stop shop for the entire target market. So that's what we've really worked hard over the last few years to implement. It's helped us drive some revenue when we were having to shut down some space and for a utilization standpoint. Now we're actually, making some money that way, and we're providing opportunities for the students and the community members that we serve every day through these partnerships. And we're able to grow these things organically day by day. Again, when you're looking at, retooling for micro-credentialing and, some of our degree certificate programs, some of these different things where we've had to shift some of our academic focus to fit some of the needs of those higher industrial and economic drivers in the communities that we serve. It has been a substantial blessing to have those folks literally in partnership with us on the same real estate. So those are some of the ways that we've tried to think outside of the box and move forward to try to help drive the entire economy of the service area that we get to represent every day.
And I think President Falkner, a strong testament to the fact as well of how deeply ingrained Carl Albert is to the community is the importance that the Carl Albert State College Foundation plays to your institution. We've had many conversations in the past regarding how this is a critical factor in some of the flexibility and ability to expand service and support to students in the campus. I wonder if you could speak a little more to that relationship as well.
Absolutely. Our development foundation is one of the greatest success stories that we could share with anybody. And we're so thankful for the leadership of our directors and our community partners that are leading the efforts in that way. But Glenn, we've been able, and I know we've had discussions about this in the past, we've been able to utilize that foundation in several different ways. I know in the state of Oklahoma, concurrent education, which is, basically a dual enrollment track, has been one of the things that we can agree on from the legislative front, with our partners at the K-12 level and higher education and career tech all combined. Concurrent education is a winner for all of us, and we can see how that can help positively impact the societies that we get to serve here, and also as a workforce driver, the quicker they can get credentialed and tool up, the better off we are, again, as an area. And so we've been very fortunate to have the support of our development foundation to help us in some of those efforts. For example, we have high poverty rates. There's a lot of low income first generation students that we serve. Well, they may have the academic eligibility requirements ready to go, where they can participate in that concurrent program. And even though we're very fortunate that our state legislature has allocated some funds to help cover some of the expense, there's still a great deal of expense associated with that process. So we've tried to do basically some campaign drivers with our development foundation. So we have individuals, local businesses, literally other foundations that work within our foundation to help supplement and pay for those concurrent costs. So now we're seeing students at the high school level that are getting more and more and more college hours completed and focused more on a faster path to completion and credentialing because of the efforts of that foundation. They've helped us in terms of, helping pay for faculty credentialing as we go back to school. We have an endowed professorship program that's been an amazing fortunality for us that's associated with the state, where we've had all of these folks who are helping us, supply new and innovative ways that we can tool up our faculty members to give them the resources and the tools they need to better educate the folks that we get to serve every day. And so that development foundation, again, is one of the most amazing success stories that I've ever had the experience of being involved with. And we're so proud of the work that we do in collaboration with those folks. And it has changed the entire landscape for the service area that we get to work with.
Fantastic to hear. President Ralls, I know Wake Tech has success stories too, even coming out of the fall with the ability of Wake Tech to distribute financial aid to 10,000 plus students, even provide grocery gift cards and provide student laptops. Is some of that flexibility also coming out of a foundation relationship or community partner relationships?
Well, absolutely. We've all been fortunate, I think, this year because of the federal funds that were made available through CARES Act and now HERF funding. And so it's enabled us to really provide that helping hand to students in ways that we couldn't before. But our foundation, it sounds like Carl Alberts has really been, helped us to get further even than that and to do things that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So the gift cards are a good example. We have pantries on each of our campuses, which have been key through, going into the pandemic. But as you get to the pandemic, we're not accessible. We're out of food. And so we had a great grocery partner here in this region, Food Lion, who partnered with us. We purchased food cards from Food Lion, but also they donated a number of food cards to us, and we're a great foundation partner beforehand. And so, I think we've given out over 4,300 $125 food cards to our students over the past year. Laptops, again, we've given out over 1,200 laptops, but the roles of companies like Coastal Credit, Federal Union, and others to take that further than we ever would have been able to. Another area is in terms of small business support. We do a lot here at Wake Tech around entrepreneurship, small business. We're kind of key for the startup programs for mom and pop small businesses that are starting in our region. They were suffering, and so we did what we called a rally fund through our foundation, where private individuals, businesses, the city of Raleigh contributed to a fund where we were able to give grants to companies that had started within the past 2 years through our small business entrepreneurship efforts to help them. It didn't provide them all the resources, but gave them a little bit of help when they needed it the most. So, companies have seen colleges like ours, it sounds like the same with Carl Albert, as kind of places where you can, if you rally around our colleges, we have ways to rally around the people in our communities as well as the businesses. And so I think we've witnessed that.
Fantastic. Really putting the emphasis on community and the community college operations. That's wonderful. I'm going to jump, because so much of what we were just talking about dealt with as well, not just the community and economic development focus, but reaching students and serving students. At the outset of today's conversation, I shared some general enrollment trends that community colleges are facing nationally, but for your respective institutions, as we're looking ahead to fall 2021 and beyond, where are your primary concerns, and maybe where are you also optimistic? President Falkner, I don't know if you want to take that first.
Sure, absolutely. I think that probably everyone on this webinar had concerns about fall enrollment because of the pandemic and the strange, surreal world that we've been living in. It's hard to compare apples to apples, when you're trying to use data analytics and predict, what enrollment trends are going to look like. Because I know in our particular area, working again, we really tried to focus and grow and reinvigorate our partnerships with the K-12 systems that we get to serve every day. And there are a lot of deep concerns because of the effects of the pandemic, in terms of everything from student attendance to academic preparation. As President Ralls said, when we look at that hierarchy of needs of how we look at the development side and the development pieces of this, folks have food needs, they have housing needs. And so it's really hard to be actualized, when you're focused on some of those things. And so we're doing everything that we can, to push forward for the fall. And I think speaking for a lot of my colleagues across the entire state of Oklahoma, we're all looking at some of those situations with kit gloves. And then we're also wondering about the long-term ramifications of how this works. We have been very blessed and fortunate to have some tools to get ready to change the lane and the direction of the way that we deliver courses online and through Zoom technology, a lot of these other ways that we've had to shift our focus and the way that we deliver things virtually. And we've been very successful that way. The question therein lies, I think, for not only our college and the other colleges that we get to work with every day in the state of Oklahoma, is what does that look like long-term? I think those are some of the battles that we're even seeing at the corporate level and some of the public sectors in terms of, real estate, office space. How do you interact with students on a day-to-day basis? Is this a regular 8 to 5 kind of environment? We've been doing intrusive advisement literally 24/7. So we've tried to be creative in the way that we work and innovate from an advisement standpoint, from a student services standpoint, from the way that we provide professional development, the way that we've tried to reach not only the students that we serve every day, but work with our own faculty and staff to try to continue to grow and to try to develop as an institution and move forward. Well, the long-term effects and ramifications of this pandemic, I think there are a lot of question marks there in terms of, are there folks that will be now more comfortable to work and learn how to be educated in that virtual environment? Are there folks that did not succeed in that realm that would prefer to be back in the in-class person? Well, there's going to be both sides, of those populations that we're going to have to serve. And so the way that we educate is growing. We feel like the positive of that is our target market can grow. We can expand who we are and how we educate through virtual mediums. The issue is how does that impact your brick and mortar population and your operations on a day-to-day basis? And what does that look like in terms of who we are as an institution 5 years from now? Quite frankly, even though we've tried to be open to innovation and redefinement, this whole pandemic has forced us to shift who we are inside and out. And we just don't know what that's going to look like 2, 3, 5 years from now.
Absolutely. And President Ralls, I'm curious, at Wake Tech, what is the outlook for fall 2021? What are the concerns? What are the points of optimism?
Well, my concern this year has been really what I would say is more the numbers behind the numbers. We've been fortunate at Wake Tech to be in a place, I think, better than most community colleges because of our growing region. But the concern's the numbers behind the numbers. So what I mean by that is when you looked at our numbers this year, like if you were just looking at the total number of students enrolled, most days they, and we do track this daily, that we had just as many students this year as we did last year. The problem was that a lot of times they weren't taking as many courses, but where the students were not, we had more students in dual enrollment, more students who were struggling with high school online, who were turning to us for online, more university students who were using us as their educational bridge. What the concern, though, was when we looked at our most vulnerable students, African-American males, working adults, that's where we'd see our vulnerability in our numbers and the declines that concerned us for the past year. And so, we're trying to pay particular attention to those parts of our community that struggle the most, because that's where we see the students who have struggled the most to stay with us. One of the areas I'll just mention, community colleges in different states do different things. North Carolina is one of the most comprehensive forms of community colleges. So we do a lot of things, but like we do all the adult basic education programs, the literacy, the high school equivalency programs. Those were the areas where we saw the greatest decline, a 50% decline over the past year. And that concerns us greatly because we know how much those students, their vulnerability economically and how much they need us. So, that's the concern. Optimism moving forward is, we're optimistic about the fall. We're planning for a fall recovery that is not so much based on pandemic, but is based on, the changes and the things we've learned through the pandemic. I think one of the optimisms for us and perhaps other community colleges is that we, over the past year, had to curtail class sizes in particularly technician lab programs because of social distancing to be able to do that. And so in areas like automotive, in areas like dental assisting, dental hygiene, our classes this year were much smaller because we just didn't take as many students. We had more students who wanted to come, but we could not accommodate them in our shops, our labs. In the fall, we anticipate being able to do that, and in those programs, getting back to a stronger, more fuller capacity.
Terrific. With regards to the vulnerable populations where you've seen the greatest declines, is there a greater focus on outreach and reinforcing and communicating the value of higher education to these populations? Or are there other approaches that you're taking to try to bring them back? What's the outlook there?
I'll jump in and just say we've had to take on different strategies this year. Anyway, it's been much more challenging. We're not in the high schools because the students have not been in the high schools, and that's been extremely challenging. So we've our open houses we do virtually, our connections with counselors we do virtually. I think that'll be an advancement for us in the future because we'll continue that, as well as our presence in the high schools. How we use technology in some cases has been challenged this year. When we market to high school students, when we do outreach, a lot of times that's around geofencing, where you're using data technology to find those places where many potential high school seniors could be gathered at one place at a time. This year they're not been gathered in any one place. They've all been in their homes. So it's made some of those outreach challenges more challenging. One area, though, that we're I'm proud of our folks here for pioneering and using of data science to be able to target stop outs. Stop outs are one of our biggest challenges with community colleges because students will frequently stop out, not because of an academic issue, but because of a life challenge. Sometimes, many times, less than $500 challenge. But we know when they stop out, they're just as likely to drop out for the long term. And so we've pioneered kind of a tool that we call Finish First. We're working with other colleges and universities with this tool right now, but it really uses data science to be able to pinpoint for students, along the way, how far are you away from a credential in terms of very specifically what courses. Sometimes they don't even know that in terms of a certificate. And what we're working towards now is how that then maps into the career opportunity. So knowing that you're just this far away, and what does that mean in terms of the career opportunities in our region? We partnered with a group called Inside Track to do our outreach in this regard and be able to tell students very specifically, not just, hey, if you come back, it can pay off, but tell them, very specifically, here's how far you have to go, here's all, and help them get to that place. And so we saw that our stop out efforts were much stronger using that data science tool than they had been in previous years.
That's a great story of really leveraging technology to meet the students where they're at and meet their needs. President Falkner, a question that comes to mind as we talk about access and different forms of access. I know, especially in rural parts of the country, a challenge, especially when the focus is purely or largely on online education, is just bandwidth of internet service providers and ability to stream classes. Has that been a challenge that y'all have been tackling, and what approaches have you taken?
It has been a challenge, both at our institution at the level, I would say, of all of the community colleges within the tier, but it's been a challenge across the entire state of Oklahoma. And one thing, Glenn, that I'm extremely proud of our state system of higher education is some of these programs that we've been kind of discussing a little bit. We've kind of taken on as a state system, which is very positive for me. For example, the OneNet system, again, under the leadership of our state regents for higher education, has really tackled the rural bandwidth issues, but has helped provide increased technological efficiencies to all students across the entire state of Oklahoma. And because of the tremendous power that OneNet, that again is part of our state system, has kind of grown and incorporated and continues to try to grow. It is offering more educational opportunity from a technical standpoint to students, not only in the rural parts of our state, but across the entire state of Oklahoma. And that's a statewide initiative. As President Ralls stated as well, from an institutional standpoint, we've really focused on some of the inside track, kind of theory. We've utilized their services as well, but the intrusive advisement models, the real focused degree mapping and how that ties into the workforce. That's another thing that I'm so proud of our state system for higher education that we've kind of taken on at all levels. So we have presidential representatives, and now we're working, with our chief academic officers and even our folks on the IT side of our business to try to tackle some of these issues to make degree maps more usable from every tier, from the 2-year tier to our 4-year focus to the research tier, and the way that we kind of gauge those things and articulate and push those things together has been a tremendous asset for our institution. And everything from, some of those gateway barriers, from math pathways, when we look at all of these different hurdles and obstacles that we have to completion. Not only from the institutional standpoint, we've tackled this at every tier as a state system. And I think that we're starting to see some of the tremendous gains of those collaborations. And I know even through our work with you all, we're finding that there are more and more and more of those kind of organic collaborations that are growing by the day. And I think that's going to help service all the students in this state and prospective students, because as President Ralls said, it has been extremely challenging from a recruitment standpoint, with our traditional college going populations and high schools. in some of those populations, even that we try to utilize with our TRIO population. It has been extremely challenging to try to reach those students. So we've looked at all of these different virtual mediums that we could utilize, but I really feel proud of the fact that we've looked at this from a state system standpoint, and it's really driving some success measures for all of us. So I'm very proud of that work.
That is fantastic to hear. In the interest of time, I'd like to jump just to over one more slide to talk briefly on the topic of organizational and financial performance. I think this builds in part, President Falkner, on some of the comments that you've shared about collaborative initiatives and identifying ways to redeploy resources or meet increased demand for resources in a time of limited funding. And maybe I'll start with you and then shift to President Ralls. Where have you experienced the greatest demand for additional resources, and then how and where have you found those?
Well, I think the demand for resources, of course, not only related to the pandemic, but we saw some of these trends emerging before, the pandemic occurred. There's just greater demands from student support. The traditional ways to recruit and advise, it's a different generation of population, not only from our traditional age population, but from our adult learners. They need more intrusive coaching, everything from the life coaching models to increased support through technological innovation. As you mentioned a bit earlier, accessibility is so important at this point, and it always has been, but I feel like the need is more prevalent than it has been in the history, not only of Carl Albert State College, but the history of higher education. And I think with a competitive landscape and market share, if we don't figure out ways to provide those resources, other folks will. And that's just the service market, that we are dealing with at this point in time. So what we've had to do, again, we've had to be creative in the ways that we provide student support using a lot of virtual means. The traditional 8 to 5 scheduling doesn't work. And so, we've had to look and retool some of the individuals in those particular areas and look at the way that their work day, appears on a day-to-day basis. So how do they deliver? When can they deliver that type of support? And what means can they deliver that support? We've had to step back and redefine ourselves from a 360 standpoint to try to add all these things. It has been challenging with the economic shortfalls that we have faced in this state pre-pandemic. We are very fortunate, with some of the federal stimulus. We're so thankful for some of those funds, but we've had to look at ways where we can cut costs, offer everything from early retirement incentives, to cutting some positions. You get down to the critical mass at that point to be very aggressive, and from a fundraising standpoint, the way that we chase grant funds, to try to provide, and especially when we look at what types of grants that we're trying to chase, a lot of those things need to focus on student support attributes. So a lot of student support focused kinds of efforts that we're trying to look at, even from a revenue standpoint. So we're trying to do those things. And another thing is we're looking at ways that we can collaborate to provide professional development. Unfortunately, travel budgets have been slashed significantly, and we're not able to travel in the pandemic. So we've looked at ways that we can again collaborate amongst institutions within our state system to try to offer different professional development opportunities, from everything to try to serve students with disabilities to Title IX clearances, to try to help folks in the residence halls. So there's a lot of different things that are moving parts and will continue to grow and evolve, but I consider that a positive out of all of this crazy experience that we're all in the midst of right now. Is if we can find deeper collaborative points and we can be more efficient and effective in the way that we utilize our resources to better serve the students in a different population where they're requiring more student service, that's what we need to be doing anyway. And so that's kind of the focal point that we are very consider the critical mass at this point in time, and we will continue to strive for that, because student support the need for student support is growing exponentially by the day. And again, if we don't figure out ways to do it, someone else will. So that's the challenge that we have, and we're very proud of the work that we're doing to try to make that happen.
Fantastic. And President Ralls, I'm assuming probably a similar demand and increase in student support needs at Wake Tech. Is that the case? Are there other areas where you're seeing demand for resources?
That's absolutely been the case. I think it's also indicated to us some of our limitations where we need to be stronger. As we moved into the pandemic, an area that we were relatively very strong was in online education. I think we offer more online degrees than any other community college in the country. We have been blessed by an infrastructure support from our county, and all of our faculty have been through training and certification as we entered the fall for online education. That was a strong point for us. What we realized, though, is that while we were very accessible and could pivot in terms of the educational piece easier, it was challenging, but easier perhaps than we may have thought. We, on the student support services side, we're still very traditional in the accessibility. You know, you come to our campuses, and the online world blew that away. So it changed communications. For us, it was calling campaigns, and our team, doing outbound calling to check in on all of our students. That changed immediately. We wanted to keep all our people, and so we repurposed a lot of folks, events people, athletics, others who could, because of their affinities, could jump into roles, and we worked very diligently on that, and we're able to expand our access points using this type of technology to expand the time frames, the accessibility. And I think that will change for us I know it will change for us moving forward. How we look in that regard will be much different positively because of the pandemic, because it pushed us to perhaps things that without that we may not have thought we could have been able to do. And we realized both that we can and how important it is. And so I think that will change us as we move into this kind of, as people say, new normal world we're heading to.
Absolutely. I want to be cognizant and respectful of your time as well as the audience's time. I shift now briefly, if there are any audience Q&As, we're certainly happy to solicit questions from the audience. Pause to see if anyone would like to submit a question.
Thank you, Glenn. I don't have any questions coming in yet. You can use the chat box or the Q&A section, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Barring any questions from the audience, I suppose just a question for concluding thoughts. Perhaps President Ralls, starting with you. What is your outlook for community colleges for the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think, we're in a very important place for our communities and for our states. There's some interesting reports that came out today. I've just had a chance to look at them from the Gates Foundation, from the Georgetown Center of Educational Work that talk about, the challenges that we were talking about prior to the pandemic with higher ed, that, higher ed has to be a driver of economic mobility, but too often over the past 10 years or so, it's segmented us more. It's not been that opportunity for everyone. That's where community college's sweet spot is that notion of economic mobility through higher education access for all. And that's a fundamental challenge for us, but it's also for our states and our communities. And that's where community colleges are going to need to be strong moving forward. That's where states are going to have to pay attention to that. A lot of times community colleges are funded based on enrollment. And sometimes, we serve vulnerable populations who are most affected by enrollment. And we do programs that were probably most affected by enrollment because they can't all be done online. And states are going to need to pay attention to making sure their community colleges are going to be strong. And if they're not, their economic mobility and their workforces in the future are going to be weak.
Absolutely. President Falkner, concluding thoughts on that?
Yes, Glenn, I appreciate President Ralls and all of his comments. And I want to say thank you to the SREB for allowing us this opportunity today. I know that the redefined roles of community college, it is going to change, I think, dramatically over the next 3 to 5 years, but our focal service point as a bridge, I think is going to be more important than it ever has been in terms of where we're headed from the K-12, traditional populations and helping that adult education population to get started, to the way that we are trying to intensify our transfer articulations to get folks ready, not only to tool up for, the workforce, but to get them ready to go on to pursue those 4-year and post-doctorate, types of degree programs. Our bridge role component is going to be more important than it ever has been. And, I think the work is going to be challenging. I think it is going to be more demanding and intensive, but I think that it is important. And I'm so thankful that we have groups like the SREB and, again, in the state system of Oklahoma, folks that are realizing what that role may look like and are supportive of where that leads us in the future. So it's an honor to be with you today, and it's an honor to serve at this level. And I think the future is bright if we can stay innovative and collaborative. And I appreciate you, Glenn.
Well, thank you, President Ralls, President Falkner. This has been an honor to speak with you. I tremendously enjoyed the conversation, as I'm sure the attendees have as well. Dr. Lawrence, I don't know if you have concluding thoughts, but I appreciate, again, everyone's time and dedication to this effort.
Thank you, Glenn. And thank you again, as Glenn has already indicated, to Dr. Falkner and Dr. Ralls for participating with us this afternoon. And thanks to Huron on behalf of SREB and our president, Dr. Stephen Pruitt, for partnering with us on this effort to take a look at critical issues in higher education amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and how institutions, regardless of what sector they're in, whether it's 2-year technical or 4-year, how they can build capacity to emerge stronger even during the pandemic and after we have overcome the challenges of this global issue. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you that have participated today and previously, and look forward for more great things from SREB.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.